Good afternoon, everyone. It is Sunday, June 11th. Actually, good evening. It's 6:30 here in the Pacific time zone. And this is your stocks to watch video for week beginning June 12th, 2023, i.e. Monday, i.e. tomorrow. The market has returned and bully methinks is getting a little tired. We need to talk about a potential pause here and a little bit of backing and filling. I believe this for a few reasons. One, we saw a lot of spiking in bullish sentiment last week. AAII bulls have hit a 1 year high. We have seen the NAIIM index, which is the money manager positioning index, nearly double in a week. There is definitely some frothiness. And given where we are on the charts, which I'm about to show, it makes some sense for a pause here, although I am not calling for a bearish reversal. Throw on a bunch of fundamentals coming out this week, i.e. PPI, CPI, Fed meetings. That's just about everything that could possibly be released is being released this week. So just be prepared for pullbacks, and anything really can happen. Looking at the NASDAQ composite, this is one of the main reasons I believe we're going to be seeing a pullback, especially in tech. We have hit this inflection point on the weekly chart and formed a weekly doji. This is an area that has provided inflection going back to early 2021. So a pause here seemed likely. I will say this, there is some bullish nuance here. If you look at the last 2 weeks, we've actually closed above, slightly above this inflection point. Not being rejected soundly right here strikes me as a bullish data point. So at this point, I would say any pullback that we see is likely to result in a viable one. But for now, I do think that it might be time to take your foot off the gas in tech, at least. Looking at the equal weight QQQ, we are still above this breakout pivot here. As long as we are above that, I can't help but have a long bias still, despite the fact that I do think we pause. Moving to the S&P 500, we also see a chart that's at a key inflection level, the August 2022 highs. A week of sideways, a week of backing and filling wouldn't be the worst thing for this market. In fact, I really am expecting it, which means I am also expecting bullish scenarios, bullish setups to possibly fail. But before we get into that, let's talk about where we were going into last week and the stocks that we were looking at. Let's see how they did. I'm ranking these in order of where they finished in their weekly range. We'll start with Wire. Wire was and is my favorite chart in the market. As you can see, we've got this long base from the 2020, late 2021 highs that had broke out here in early 23, has channeled back and dropping down to a daily, had a beautiful little shakeout here, which immediately reversed, took out the channel, consolidated sideways, and headed on up. So I am out most of this for now. I am not selling all of it. The chart still says up to me, and I'm not going to argue with that no matter where we are on the index charts. And I would say that this remains on the watch list. I might add back, but we'll see how it plays out. But that one was a huge winner. Urban Outfitters broke out of this base going back to late 2022. It broke out there in late May, and this was on the watch list for last week, and it did indeed claw its way higher. I'm not wild about how this action is unfolding. Really, it's kind of wedgy. This is kind of what I was talking about, where I was expecting things to fail. The last thing that would surprise me here is for this just to come right back down and perhaps even go back all the way down and back test the breakout. So I am out this one. It was fun. It was slow. It actually wasn't much fun. It is a slow, low beta stock, but you can't lose much anyway. Berkshire Hathaway, this is another one that had taken out a base and consolidated. This was a good winner for me this week. It ran up all the way above the consolidation pivot. Now it is extended. Again, I'm kind of thinking this is going to fail, so I sold everything. It would have been better had it moved up to the top and then done some tightening and then moved up. Instead, it's just broken up. And as you'll see, when these stocks break out in an extended state, the idea that they keep going is slim. They tend to fall back in or fail altogether. So that one was good, but I'm out. Moving on to Teradyne, which from last week, Teradyne, the long-term chart looks great. Weekly channel breakout. It continues to move sideways in a range since that breakout, playing with the top of this pivot. Again, this is one I think it's more likely that it actually falls back to the bottom of the range, given where we are on the NASDAQ chart. That wouldn't be the end of the world. It is on my watch list for this week, but I'm not that interested in it unless it can do something like that. I don't think this grind up higher is going to sustain. Moving on to Dexcom, which is this thing's been on my watch list now for so many months, I can't even remember. But this long base continues to get longer and longer in the tooth, dropping down to a daily. Last week we talked about it when it was here. I did not think it was going to break out from that spot. It was too extended near term, and sure enough, we did get the pullback. But Thursday and Friday, it did kind of ramp back towards the top of that range. This one may go this week. So I don't know how much longer they can keep this base in check, but by all means, I would put it on the watch list for next week. Moving on to KLAC, KLAC. This is another semi playing around at all-time highs. It's had a couple of weeks of sideways. Looking at the daily chart, it's actually been in this range now and got soundly rejected at the top of the range. Like Teradyne, I think this more likely scenario here is it comes back down to the bottom of this range, which would be fine, but the long-term chart looks fantastic on the watch list. Cameco, CCJ was on the watch list last week as it broke above this symmetrical triangle and dropping down to the daily. You can see not only is it taking out that triangle, it's taken out this pivot as well, and it's just kind of flagging here. It's very high on my list. Actually, this whole uranium sector, as we'll get to in the stocks to watch portion, is striking me as extraordinarily bullish, but we'll wait for that part a little bit later. Costco, which was on my watch list as it moved above this symmetrical triangle, has come off my watch list. I just don't like how this thing is acting. It is just kind of grinding away. It strikes me as a stock that is in bad need of a near-term shakeout before it can make an advance. So I tried to play it as it moved above this pivot. It drove me crazy and I bailed. And I didn't want to carry it in over the weekend. So be curious to see how it works this week. It's not going to be an actionable stock though. Pacific Bioscience, this is one that has formed this long base going back to its lows in 2022. Now it's hit the top of this crazy bar from August 2022. I don't like how it is wedging into it, however. I'm skeptical here that it's just going to break out. My guess is it probably does need to run some stops if it is going to fail. But this is one that just strikes me after many years of trading. I look at this and it smells like a failure in the future. I pulled it off my watch list, although long term, it's still a pretty good looking chart. Baidu was on my watch list for last week. I've decided to pull it off for this week. It's not doing anything wrong. I still think this flat correction, this fake double bottom breakdown and recovery is solid, but I decided that I'm not going to trade stocks that trade on other exchanges. I can't see the nuances. These charts just jump all over the place. You've got gaps here, gaps everywhere. The intraday movement isn't really, I can't pick up the nuances. So I've got enough stocks on my watch list. I just decided to leave well enough alone. CTAS, Cintas Corp. This is a long base going back to late 2021, which continues to power higher. This is an industrial, and as you may remember that XLI chart I posted, generally industrials are on their own cycle right now, and I'm very comfortable playing this one long. Should it take out this pivot here? I'm very curious to see the fact that where we are on the S&P chart. Want to see how it affects stocks like this and other industrials which are starting to power forward and which we'll get to in the stocks to watch portion. Carvana, I waved bye-bye to Carvana last week. It was a fun ride, actually my biggest winner of the year. We started talking about it here, or I started talking about it. There is no we. When it was consolidating in this triangle, above this recovery pivot, and then it just took off, and it actually more than doubled. Actually, I think from the time I bought it, yeah, it's like up 16, like 120% or something. Anyways, this was a squeeze candidate. That's all I was playing it for, and it certainly squoze. So it's taken out this pivot now here in an extended state, and sure enough, a failure seems to be imminent, if not already in progress. So it may reset. I'm not interested in it anymore. At least not. There's plenty of other targets. Generally speaking, a lot of the squeeze candidates are played out, and we'll get to a couple of those, or at least one of those, at least in the near term, in the stocks to watch video. Align Technology, still very keen on this one. This one is, I still believe, has finished a flat correction, had a little faux double bottom breakdown, and has now found its way back above that double bottom neckline, for lack of a better term. I'm looking for more sideways and then a push up through that pivot at 311.82. And that would confirm to me that this flat correction is over and that we're going to see a break of this longer term base here. Mobileye is right off my menu. I've had enough of this thing. This thing gave, not only has it given back, given back this pivot here when it looked like it was going to head up towards the top of the base, it's just jumping around like crazy. I can't get a read on this thing anymore. This does not suit my style. I need tightening action. So unless it does something like this and starts coiling and tightening around this downtrend line, I'm not going to be interested in it. So for now, it's off the menu, as is Duolingo. Duolingo, which I talked about last week, was in a very late cycle flag that I thought it was prone to failure. And if you see, I did play this as it was above this pivot. I was like, I felt confident enough to play the next pivot break, and I was quickly stopped out on this candle right here on Wednesday. It failed hard. Generally speaking, I just think this thing is tired, much like Bully in the first slide. It's probably needs to reset on a much longer term base. I've taken it off my watch list. Probably will be off for a while, but you know, if anyone sees this thing doing something interesting, by all means, leave a note in the comments. Google's another one just showing tiredness. It made its way back to this consolidation shelf here, the lower range of the shelf from early 2022, and it was starting to look actually promising for a break. Had a couple of kind of hammerish doji candles. And then last week, it actually did break it and promptly failed. So this is kind of what I'm expecting to see a little more of. I think a lot of the easy money has been made for this cycle on Google. But it's going to, I mean, this is still a stock I'm looking for a valid reset. It's just in a spot where it needs to correct. Array Technologies was one I barely wanted to put on my watch list last week, and I'm sorry I did, mainly because even if it had broken above this horizontal pivot, it was going to run right into another one. And when you trade, you need asymmetrical risk reward, and this simply does not have it. And then, quite frankly, when I drop down to a daily, it looks like it might be failing at this pivot anyway. So it's off the watch list for next week. I would add that I actually have a short setup on TAN, the solar ETF, which we'll get to in just a few minutes. So if you are in Array Technologies as a long and that TAN short plays out, by all means, I would frankly get the hell out. And then the last one is General Electric Health, GE Health Technologies, the spinoff from GE. This is super interesting. I went into last week with it as a long candidate, as it was pulling a coil here above a low pivot, and then it did take it out, and then promptly fell apart like nobody's business. I don't know if there was something fundamental going on, if there was an offering. I mean, I don't know what happened here. I don't really care, but it now is actually set up as a possible short candidate. I'm looking for possibly a lower high and then a fail. If it does decide to just keep going and then put in a lower high and then go, I do believe that this is one of the better looking shorts in the market. Funny how that works. Go into a week with a stock on your bullish watch list. You come out of it, come out of the week with a stock that's top of the list for shorts. This is the way it goes sometimes in the market. Anyways, moving on to next week's watch list. Again, we're going to rank these in order of where they finished in their weekly range. Uber looks like it's still in a power trend. I've got no problem buying this one. Ideally, it would be nice to see maybe a gap down tomorrow and then a push red to green, and then you could grab that with a stop at the low of day. But for now, I do like this stock. If it again, I am very cautious right now of failures. But if I was going to play one stock long, this would be it. Why are we talked about URA? So this is the uranium ETF I was mentioning earlier. This is on its own cycle, and it looks like it's due for some rotation. The move off the 2020 lows looks like a trend wave, and since the 2021 high, it's really just kind of correcting out. We discussed CCJ. CCJ doesn't actually look like this. CCJ has already broken out. It is the clear leader in the sector, and I'm in CCJ. I've also bought a little EU, which is a uranium stock, basically on a wedge breakout on huge volume. This looks like it's getting some serious interest. This is a very low price stock, high beta. I would not be putting much of my portfolio in this, and I haven't, but it is one, if I'm going to play this uranium break, it has already broken, and with the volume coming in, it does strike me as one that has more upside potential than most. Okay, moving on to another industrial, we have ATKR, which has broken out of a long base going back to late 2021, has come back to test that breakout pivot in a wedge here and has just taken off. So this is one, if we do see pullback this week and then we can reset with a pushback above the pivot here, I would be all over. This is one of my favorite stocks right now in the market, along with Wire. I'm keeping an eye on this one for next week. PCAR is another one I'm keeping an eye on for next week. Again, another long horizontal base that's been taken out. But I do think on the daily, it is a little extended. And I actually wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see it come all the way back to the breakout pivot before it decides it wants to go. But it's well worth putting on the watch list for next week. And another industrial, we've got BA, which is part of the XLI industrial ETF. You've got yourself a breakout of a triangle pattern and then a day of consolidation. So looking for something tightening here and then a push up through that pivot for continuation of this move. It does look like this one is going higher. BIIB, Biogen. I want to show the monthly on this. I almost put this on my watch list for last week. This is one I've been watching for a long time. This is a very, very long flat correction going back 8 years that had a shakeout in 2022 and promptly moved up. Now, I've been watching it, waiting to see when this first move up, the pivot could break, moving back to a weekly chart. That actually, it dabbled in it this week, as you can see here, and then kind of just channeled back off of it. And of course, on Friday, this stock was halted all day, pending an FDA announcement, which came out after the bell. I can see that the bid ask is up and around the high 320s now. So we're looking at a $20 gap up here. I think this thing has lots more to go. Now, I'm not interested in buying the gap up tomorrow, but it does look like one that if it can reset with something I can recognize as a corrective pattern, this strikes me as a stock that's at least going to head back to the top of its range. Moving on, BBY. This is a doggish retail stock. However, just recently, it broke out on heavy volume. It showed up on a high volume scan a couple of weeks ago. And then once it broke out of this ending diagonal, it's consolidated under it. So I'm looking for maybe more tightening this week and then a push up through this pivot. And then it would take out the anchored volume weighted average price off of the 2023 highs. And it should make a run at least to the top of the wedge, which is the next pivot around 79.35. Ultimately, I think it could go higher, but for now, I think it could be good for a few bucks. Teradyne, we talked about. Dexcom, we talked about. EU, we talked about. Let's move on to the regional bank index. I'm looking at this as a possible bear flag. So this is a short setup. It is run back to the top of the channel, the top of the flag, hit the anchored volume weighted average price off the 2023 highs. And would begin to its decline here. So this is a speculative short at this point. It's not one I'm in. I'm just watching it for next week. When I look at a stock like TFC, which is in that index, it's even more wedgy. Um, Very bearish looking to me. The volume has not really increased yet on the move down, and I would only care about volume once it takes out the wedge. This is one I would wait for like a break of the wedge and then a lower high and then the next move down. I haven't really been overly impressed with any of the regional banks. The move has been choppy and overlappy. The one that wasn't choppy was Zion, which just had a very clean, I mean, from an Elliott wave perspective, that is a 5 wave move, which could easily just be a C wave and then it could turn over because, I mean, this whole thing, this whole area here could easily just be a flat correction that's slightly tilted. But regardless, even if this is a fresh move, a 5 wave move off the lows, that's a fresh move, it's going to correct. And that means it comes back to 26.59 under the most bullish circumstance. So realistically, you've got a bullish situation where it drops $4. You've got a bearish situation where it drops a lot more than that. So regional banks are high on my list for shorts next week. Moving back to the bull side, this is SOFI. SoFi is not actionable this week. I just hadn't discussed it yet, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it. We have a gorgeous inverse head and shoulders base forming here. Now, that being said, we've cut a daily chart where the stock is pretty much doubled in less than a month with barely a correction. So it ran some stops, obviously, above the August 22 high and put in this nasty reversal candle. I think this thing needs probably a week or two to reset before I reevaluated it, but I'm putting it on the watch list for curiosity for now. Another short setup is US Steel. This is a channel that is broken on the weekly chart and on the daily chart is just flagging. Again, this is a little speculative right now. I mean, for all I know, this little range here could be taken out on Monday and it's off to the races. But if I do see it move heading back towards the bottom of the range, put in a lower high and then make another lower low, I like this one for a move all the way back to the 2022 lows down in the 1650 area. Speculative for now, on the watch list. KLAC we've discussed, CCJ we've discussed. TGTX is super interesting. A lot of folks follow this one on Twitter, and a lot of folks were looking at this, including me, as a bear flag or bull flag, which broke last week or broke in I guess late May, early June, and then was looking to show some follow through last week. Well, I did try a long on the break of this pivot, and I was promptly stopped out as this looks like a failure. So if this just ends up being a little correction of this, and we're heading into a continuation of this move, this thing is heading a long way down. Obviously, it's a little early to say much. It could just gap up on Monday, take out this pivot, in which case I'd be very long. But for now, I'd be watching for a break of this low and then make a lower high, which I think would be met with some serious sell demand. And then I believe it's going to tank. But for now, it's a speculative play. TFC we discussed. Shopify back to the bull world. Again, this is just a 130-minute chart where we have a flag that's been taken out. It's pulled back, and now hopefully it just consolidates under this pivot. Nothing I'm in a rush to play, given where the index charts are right now. Has to take that pivot out for me to get interested. Align technology we discussed. Micron is super interesting. So on the weekly chart, we have this massive base which went in May, as you can see, and has promptly returned to the scene of the crime. I am not keen on the speed with which this has come back to test its breakout pivot, but for the record, I'm looking at this as a possible long or a possible short. In the more near term, it would be a long. I'd be looking for some kind of bullish reversal pattern around here. I mean, this is a key buy area. I do think bulls are going to step in here and at least try. Again, I'm a little bit freaked out by the speed and momentum we've seen on this back test. That's not generally how I like to see back tests, although arguably you could say it's a decent shakeout. So it's a possible long. If this does create a nice bounce, reversal pattern in here, maybe on the 65-minute time frame, and I would be long. If that bounce then fails and comes back down below this pivot, we're looking at one of the better shorts that we would have seen in a very, very long time. So something's going to happen here. I just don't know what yet. That's why it's on the watch list. Moving on to another short. This is, as I was mentioning, the solar ETF. We have seen a long coil which has broken down and has this sector has just not been interested in the rally that's been going on in the markets. It has just flagged below this triangle, looking for a lower low and followed by a lower high being met with sell demand, then a subsequent lower low. That's the short entry there. Watch list as a possible short for obvious reasons. And then the last one is booking.com. Booking.com's been a monster, but it is tired. Like the first slide showed, it is tired. We have a bull run that seems to have ended with an ending diagonal wedge. We have had a break of this wedge on very large volume. We have seemed to have had a back test, and now it seems to be falling away again. So this is often how bulls end. There's no short here for me yet. It needs to take this out and then create a lower high, a lower low, lower high, lower high, lower low combination. The alternate, there is a bullish scenario here where this basically is just a long consolidation that's slightly tilted upwards. If that's the case, then this would get taken out. And if that gets taken out, I'd be buying with both fists. And what's that? The 27, this stock needs a split, 27.34.40, or a break below 24.60. You know, you can see it on the chart. Anyways, that's it for this week's Stocks to Watch video. If you like what you see, by all means, like, subscribe, thumbs up, notification bell, all that great YouTube stuff. If you could, this is a brand new channel, of course, as I've mentioned, and your support's greatly appreciated. I'll still be posting the videos. This has proven to be an excellent diary for me, but that's all for this week, and I hope you all have a great trading week.